We'll be switching to another company when the contract is up. Much appreciated. Faha, it's so funny seeing you try to talk big when that's all you've got. Without a word, I left the entrance of Smith Trading. After walking a bit from the grand entrance, I turned back towards the Smith Trading building and whispered, Richard, Brown the sycophant, and White who can only get work by underhanded means. You've dug your own graves, just you wait. My name is Bob. I'm 59 years old this year. I'm currently running my own company, Jones Inventions, and my days are packed. I was born and raised in a rural town in Kyushu, rich with nature. As a kid, I was the wild leader of the pack, running around the hills and fields every day, playing until I was covered in mud by sunset. This unrestrained freedom during my childhood nurtured the creativity that would become the foundation of my identity. My family ran a part-time farm, using the fields passed down through generations, while my father worked as a civil servant at the local town hall. In this relatively privileged environment, I grew up healthy and was always at the top of my class academically in middle school. So, for high school, I went to the top public school in the neighboring town. Born with exceptional speed, I was scouted and reluctantly joined the track team in high school, competing as a sprinter while also starting an inventors club with a few like-minded friends. It was around this time that I began coming up with all sorts of eccentric ideas, which seemed to lay the groundwork for my future as an inventor. In my senior year of high school, a binder for studying that I created using a simple yet clever idea won the Minister's Award. Encouraged by this success, it was then that I first decided to make a career as an inventor. I went on to study engineering at a university in Tokyo. From a young age, I've always despised mindlessly following the crowd, preferring to go my own way even if everyone else was going in the opposite direction. You could say I marched to the beat of my own drum, though my family and friends often called me contrary. I've always struggled with the idea of blindly following an organization. So much so that I didn't even participate in job hunting during my junior year of college. Instead, I had already started my own business venture within the university. As a sole proprietor, I was licensing new products based on my various inventions and pitching them to large corporations. Upon graduating, I decided to pursue graduate studies and simultaneously founded my own company, Jones Inventions. Over the next 30 years, although there were several times when the business nearly collapsed, I managed to overcome crisis and build a solid foundation for the company. Through a journey full of twists and turns, Jones Inventions has grown to a company with over 200 employees. While I'm the CEO and president of this company, I also continue to wear the hat of an inventor and development engineer. Leading the charge on the ground makes my days incredibly busy. Of course, this is a good problem to have, and while my days are packed, they are also fulfilling. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Frankly, there have been times when I've felt downright disheartened. The biggest current source of my dismay, that's Smith Trading, one of our major clients. More precisely, a man named Richard, who recently became the president of Smith Trading, has been a source of my recent blues. Originally, Smith Trading was a great and reliable client, with a good relationship nurtured since the previous president, who was very fond of us. In the early days, the transactions with them were significant enough to be counted on one hand for Jones Inventions. It all stemmed from the solid relationship between the previous president and myself. But one day, the former president suddenly collapsed and passed away unexpectedly. Though he was close to 70, he was an exceptionally robust and energetic individual. So his death was a bolt from the blue, sending Smith Trading into a mild panic. As a result of the president's sudden demise, his second son, Richard, was abruptly appointed as the successor to Smith Trading. The former president had 2 sons. But the elder son had rejected the path of succeeding his father's business from the start, choosing to go to medical school and later becoming a practicing physician. Richard, having held a senior executive position in one of Smith Trading's subsidiaries, had been very open about his intention to take over his father's company and assets. So, following his father's sudden death, Richard was the first to declare his presidency, which was accepted by the board, making him the second president. That in itself would have been fine, but Richard's character upon assuming presidency was deplorable. The uncomfortable encounter during Richard's inaugural greeting when I visited Smith Trading still hasn't faded from memory. Richard crushed the business card I handed over while bowing, with just a glance, and tossed it into the trash can. Then, he sneered at me as if I were filth and said, "My dad was really a naive fool to have dealt with a trashy company like yours for so long. Listen up, Bob, now that I'm the second president, I'm afraid we'll have to reconsider our relationship with your jinky small-time business from scratch. From here on out, we're only dealing with companies that bring us benefits." Internally seething but keeping my composure, I managed to reply, "Your father has been a great help to us for many years. So, while it's regrettable to hear our company called junk, we intend to continue our dealings. After all, doing so would surely sadden your father in heaven." Richard then pointed at me, laughing scornfully with an exaggerated disdain. The junkie president of a small-timer is getting ahead of himself. Listen here, old man. Your company is the dregs of small-time trash. Got it, my dad wouldn't be sad about me cutting off such garbage. Don't get cocky, bottom feeder. That was Richard's greeting to me upon our first meeting. Since then, every time I went to Smith Trading for deals or negotiations, I was inevitably made to feel uncomfortable. Dealing with Richard was bad enough, but he always had someone shadowing him like a ghost, serving as nothing more than a yes man. That man's name was Brown. Although he was older than Richard, he was a sycophant and a careerist skilled in currying favor. Quite the opposite of the personable and competent predecessor president. Under the previous president, Brown had always just been a salesman, but Richard's ascension changed his prospects dramatically. By laying it on thick with Richard, Brown was acknowledged and, in an unprecedented leap, appointed as the head of sales. Since then, leaving the crucial sales work to his subordinates, he's been nothing but a nuisance in business progress. Always sticking close to Richard, the second president, and sucking up relentlessly. Brown, picking up on Richard's disdain for me and my company, never misses a chance to throw a snide remark my way. "Bob, back again, just like Richard says. Dealing with a small fry company like yours is just embarrassing, with absolutely no benefit to us. You should realize that on your own." In Richard's presence, he would shower me with such misplaced slander. Richard, clearly pleased, responded, "Brown, you hit the nail on the head here, Bob. We're in the midst of reforming, looking to sever ties with bottom-tier companies like yours. You might as well hang tight and wait." Indeed, since Richard took over as the second president, it was evident that he was openly snubbing long-standing small and medium-sized business partners like ours, shifting towards major corporations and, notably, emerging young ID ventures. During my visits to Smith Trading, I frequently noticed such new vendors coming and going. Among them were companies that were rivals to ours. Trend Systems, a rising ID venture, was exactly such a competitor. The president of Trend Systems, a man around 40 named White, was an astutely savvy individual with no scruples. As I was leaving Smith Trading after concluding negotiations, I ran into White. With his smug grin, he boldly said to me, Well, President Bob, steering a declining company must be tough, I sympathize. I've always found him unlikable, but he seemed particularly obnoxious this time." Hello, I didn't know you were doing business with Smith Trading as well. Unfortunately for you, our company is far from declining. Thanks to our efforts, we're doing quite well." Then, White burst out laughing unabashedly and replied, "Ahahada, poor thing, you still don't know anything, do you? Well, you'll understand soon enough. My condolences." With a sleazy grin still on his face, White waved at me and left. A couple of weeks later, one day, I visited Smith Trading again for a contract renewal for ongoing business. The former president was a considerate man, and I never had to wait when visiting the company. However, since his son Richard became the second president, I've never not been made to wait, always enduring long delays. Today as well, over 30 minutes past the scheduled time, Richard's lackey Brown finally showed up and said, "Richard has just finished an important deal, so it'll be another 10 minutes, old man." Every time it's like this, instead of an apology, I'm spoken to as if my arrival is some kind of inconvenience. Holding back what I really wanted to say, I waited for about 15 minutes as told, and finally, the conference room door opened. Richard and Brown walked in, followed by White, the president of Trend Systems. All of them had this annoying smirk on their faces. Wondering what was going on, I stood up, bowed to them, and said, "As the time has come to renew the contract for the products we've been trading continuously with your company, I've brought the new contract and manual today." Regarding this, but then Brown, standing next to Richard, flippantly waved his hand to cut me off. "Oh, that, dude, just forget it." Huh. I was clueless about what Brown meant. And as I stood there dumbfounded, the three of them looked at each other and burst into laughter, clearly amused. Then, with a smug look, Brown mockingly said to me, "Don't you get it? It means the contract with your junk bottom tire company and us is over, understand?" Shocked into silence by their audacity, Richard piled on, "We're switching to another company. The contract is terminated." Stunned by Richard's blatantly foolish declaration of contract termination, I found myself responding, "What, do you mean to say you're contracting these products and this system with another company instead of ours?" Then, not Richard but White, who was behind, seized the moment to mock me, saying, "Yeah, you really lack comprehension, don't you? That's why your contract got cut. The other company is us. I told you so the other day." At that moment, I fully understood everything and felt a deep contempt for the three in front of me, deeming them despicable and petty. "Thank you," I found myself responding instinctively. Richard looked bewildered at first, but Brown quickly said, "PFFD, look at this loser trying to put on a brave face. This is hilarious." Richard quickly agreed and sneered at me. "Ahahaha, feeling sore, are we? Well, I guess we have to allow the pathetic bottom dwellers their gripes." White chimed in, echoing the sentiment. "That's so magnanimous of you, Richard, even showing pity to a loser whose contract got axed." Unable to stomach the ridiculous farce any longer, I stood up and walked out of Smith Trading's entrance without saying a word. After walking away from the grand entrance, I looked back at the Smith Trading building and muttered, "Richard, Brown the sycophant, and White who can only win with dirty tricks, you've dug your own graves, you'll see." 3 weeks later, my company and my cell phone started receiving incessant calls of desperate pleas from employees of Smith Trading's sales department. I had instructed my employees to not entertain these calls and to respond as instructed every time. All this was decided by your company's second president and the head of sales. Please direct your complaints to them. There's a deeper reason for this. Richard and Brown might have easily cut off their contract with my company. Jones' invention, but it wasn't just about the products we were directly supplying. Many products and systems supplied to Smith Trading by other companies use technology developed with patents owned by us. All these companies had to get a license from me and my company, and pay patent royalties based on sales incentives. This was also true for the products of Trend Systems, who thought they had cleverly snatched away the contract. White, a man driven by greed and self-interest, apparently didn't know that the technology used in Trend Systems products supplied to Smith Trading was patented by me. I issued a directive to all suppliers delivering these products and systems to Smith Trading that they were forbidden from providing any product that used the patented technology owned by us to Smith Trading. As a result, all deliveries and service provisions halted, leading to Smith Trading's sales staff and other employees panicking and desperately calling us day after day. I steeled my heart and let all their calls go unanswered. As a result, many of Smith Trading's partners started to terminate their contracts with them in a domino effect. This caused a significant disruption to Smith Trading's operations and created gaps in their services, visibly decreasing their revenue. Then, one day, an unexpected visitor arrived at Jones Invention. It was White, the president of Trend Systems, who had once smugly snatched away our contract. "Please, show him to the president's office," I instructed my employee. When White entered my office, his appearance was drastically more worn and exhausted compared to when we last met. His eyes were clearly showing signs of exhaustion, and his complexion was as pale as a zombie's. White staggered up to me and suddenly prostrated himself on the floor, bowing deeply. "Bob, please forgive my previous rudeness. Here I am, on my knees. I was utterly ignorant about you and your company. I was truly foolish." As White continued to apologize to me in tears, I coldly looked down and replied, "You thought you had cleverly snatched away our contract, didn't you? Well, welcome to your nightmare. I had no idea that all our products and systems couldn't function without your patented technology. Oh, how foolish I was." White, elated at having snatched away the contract for Trend Systems, ended up being unable to sell any of their products. It was because I revoked the license to use the patented technology. As a result, not just Smith Trading but all other dealings came to a halt. And within just a month, Trend Systems found itself in a financial crisis. If this continues, our company will go bankrupt. Please, I beg you. We're willing to pay a higher incentive for the patent royalty agreement. Just grant us the license to use your patented technology." To White's tearful plea, I answered coldly, "No, according to you, our company is on the decline, right? It's disgraceful to cry to a declining company for help." Since the day that contract was cut, I had not a single millimeter of intention to forgive this guy. This despicable man had to face the consequences of his heinous actions. White, utterly denied and with a soul-crushed gait, trudged out of my company. He looked utterly drained of spirit and energy. Watching his retreating figure, I muttered emotionlessly, "That's the first one down." The next month, Trend Systems went bankrupt. The market for the patented technology owned by my company was worth a staggering 1 trillion yen. Most of these patents are my inventions, and some are widely used around the world. Very popular technologies, with huge licensing deals with global corporations, including big tech companies based in America. Thus, my company holds assets far beyond what its size might suggest, managed by a separate entity established for operations and cash flow. This entity is called Reversal Holdings, one of the leading asset management firms in the country. I actually founded this company, but its CEO and top executive is my brother-in-law, Jack, who used to be a star trader at a foreign investment bank. Reversal Holdings owns stakes in many companies both domestically and internationally, wielding significant influence over their management. Furthermore, as a major shareholder, it sometimes engages in hostile takeovers to expand the group of companies under its umbrella. I usually entrust the management of the vast profits from the patented technology fees collected worldwide to Reversal Holdings, maintaining a neutral stance of no involvement. Thus, many people in other companies know of Reversal Holdings as one of the leading asset management and investment firms in the country, but are mostly unaware that it actually originated from the small-scale Jones invention. However, for the first time, I decided to overturn this stance and use Reversal Holdings, the management body, specifically to deliver a fittingly formed revenge against Richard and his corrupt associates. In fact, Reversal Holdings also happens to be a major shareholder of Smith Trading, holding over 20% of its entire stock. Additionally, my brother-in-law Jack was listed as an external director on the board of Smith Trading. I instructed Jack to call for an emergency board meeting of Smith Trading. Sure, leave it to me, I'll tighten the screws on those villains thoroughly. Jack readily agreed and meticulously prepared before sending out the notice for the board meeting to all directors. He also called a general shareholders meeting simultaneously. And there, he initiated a legal action for the dismissal of directors under the Company Law Article 854. Of course, all of this was scripted by me. At both meetings, it was discussed how Smith Trading's business had been thriving during the predecessor president's era, but took a steep downturn since Richard assumed the role of the second president, especially after terminating the contract with Jones Invention. Richard's management led to a crisis, spiraling the company into turmoil, and his responsibility was heavily scrutinized. Richard, furious, made selfish and illogical rebuttals. But nobody took him seriously due to the anger over the rapid decline he caused in the company's management. Thanks to Jack's groundwork, the dismissal resolution passed with a majority vote in both the board and shareholders meeting, officially removing Richard as the CEO of Smith Trading. After the shareholders meeting concluded and Richard officially received the notice of his dismissal, leaving him in a state of shock, I called him. "Huh, is that you? What do you want now?" As usual, Richard spoke to me condescendingly, looking down on me, but I told him, "Congratulations on your dismissal as president. In this regard, I will be visiting Smith Trading's main conference room tomorrow, and I would like you and the head of sales, Brown, to attend as well." Richard responded incredulously over the phone. I could understand if a major shareholder or board member said that. But why are you, the lowest of the low, telling me this? You have nothing to do with this, old man. You'll understand if you attend tomorrow, I said and hung up. The next day, in the top floor conference room of Smith Trading's headquarters, the entire assembly was present, including the recently dismissed second president Richard, the sales director Brown, all internal and external directors, officers, major shareholders, and myself. Once everyone was gathered, Jack began. "Now that everyone is here, I'd like to discuss the disposition of Smith Trading and its future." Shocked by Jack's calm preamble, Richard exclaimed, "Disposition? This company is mine, built by my father. What do you mean by disposition? Don't get ahead of yourself." Jack, suppressing a chuckle, replied, "You're the one getting ahead of yourself, Richard. Smith Trading is a publicly traded company. It doesn't belong to you but to the shareholders. And now, you're just someone who, as the captain, steered the company onto the rocks and has been dismissed for it." Crap. Richard slammed his fist on the conference table. I watched silently until I finally spoke up. "As ugly as ever. Today, we have invited a guest here. Richard and Brown. You despicable villains who have strayed far from the path of decency, today marks the day of reckoning." Richard and Brown glared at me with bloodshot eyes. "Don't mess with us, you lowlife. Why is someone like you, a bottom feeder, even attending this meeting? You're out of place." Ignoring their insults, I calmly called out towards the door. "Please, come in." Then, the conference room door opened, and a man entered. It was White, the former president of the bankrupt Trend Systems. "Please, take a seat. Today, you're here to candidly testify about the actions you, Richard, and Brown have taken, aren't you?" As Jack spoke calmly, White nodded profoundly with a resigned, expressionless face, as if he had come to a realization. "Mr. White, you've climbed the ranks not through technological prowess but through despicable means, such as bribery and whining and dining the right people to steal jobs from competitors. You're ready to admit all that and speak openly about it, correct?" White looked straight at me and then nodded twice, significantly. Then, he began to speak fluidly, like water flowing. His monologue revealed. Smith Trading had a long-standing, positive trading relationship with my company, Jones Invention, with no room for interference during the predecessor president's time. However, after the sudden death of the predecessor, and Richard, a person full of greed, took over as the second president, and Brown, who loves money, became the sales director, Trend Systems saw an opportunity to snatch the contract from Jones Invention. Thus, White first launched a bribery offensive against the sales director, Brown, and it was a resounding success. Next, I confessed to Richard about making a deal with Trend Systems that included under-the-table kickbacks, a secret agreement if they signed with us. So, that's why Richard and Brown cut off the contract with us. Jones Inventions, which was a good business partner during your father's era, all for their own ugly greed, I concluded. White resignedly nodded in agreement, but Richard and Brown, their faces red, stood up and shouted in unison. "Hey, White, you're the one who offered bribes and kickbacks, don't pin this on us, traitor. And you, Bob. What's with the call yesterday? Who the heck are you? Just a small-time company president, right? What right do you have to be here, acting all high and mighty, so annoying?" Richard said to me, almost threateningly. Then, as if answering Richard's question, Jack laughed and said, "Richard, you really are clueless. This man, Bob, is the actual owner of our Reversal Holdings." The reveal caused a major shock, making all the executives gathered in the meeting room stir. Richard and Brown were so surprised they froze, their eyes wide open, unable to move. "That's ridiculous." Jack continued to explain the hidden truth while staring at Richard and Brown. "My inventions and patents command a market size of 1 trillion yen and are used worldwide. Reversal Holdings was originally founded by me to manage that enormous wealth. The actual shareholder of the massive amount of Smith Trading stocks that Reversal Holdings holds is me, among other things." As Jack explained, the faces of Richard and Brown gradually turned pale. Then, White, who had been silent, suddenly burst into laughter and exclaimed, "So, Richard and Brown, you've gone and insulted one of your own company's major shareholders, then cut them off and kicked them out because of your own ugly greed. This is hilarious, you're done, both of you." Stunned, Richard and Brown stood frozen as I delivered the final ultimatum. "When you suddenly informed me about the contract termination, Richard, my sincere response was much appreciated. Considering our global incentive contracts and the substantial regular income that comes without us lifting a finger, maintaining a follow-up with a small client like Smith Trading honestly offered no benefit. But Richard, I was truly indebted to your father and continued the contract as a way of repaying that kindness. You're the one who ended it, much appreciated, was my genuine feeling." Hearing the full revelation, Richard slumped to the floor in despair. Watching coldly, Jack delivered the closing remarks. "So, Richard, you're finished. We will no longer involve you in Smith Trading in any way, and you have no right to be. And to the disgrace Brown. Your corrupt practices for personal gain have not only been highlighted by White, but others as well. Prepare yourself for severe punishment at the upcoming board meeting. Brown collapsed to the floor, curling up and clutching his head, as Jack sternly proclaimed. Unable to bear watching this distasteful scene any longer, I left the room and went outside. As Jack had predicted, a board meeting of Smith Trading was convened shortly thereafter to discuss the fate of Brown. In the meeting, it was revealed one after another that Brown had been accepting bribes and under-the-table kickbacks from business partners, and he was unanimously dismissed with disciplinary discharge. After being fired, Brown was charged by Smith Trading with embezzlement and breach of trust and received a prison sentence. Brown is now spending his days in prison, filled with regret. White, who caused Trend Systems to collapse into bankruptcy, confessed his guilt to me and, under the condition of making it public in the meeting, was absorbed into Jones Inventions in a merger, taking in all the employees. White personally has deeply reflected on his actions, so I rehired him at my company to start from the bottom. Although he was once a president, he's now at the very bottom, learning everything about product development from scratch, even while being ridiculed by colleagues more than 10 years his junior. Richard was permanently expelled from Smith Trading and cut off from affiliated companies. Richard, who had been coddled from birth as the president's son and never knew hardship, is now reduced to an incompetent person without any connections or influence. Having no skills, Richard is now over 30, working part-time at a convenience store among students, barely making ends meet. He will likely spend some time reflecting and tasting bitterness. It's been almost 3 years since that contract termination incident. In the end, Smith Trading was fully incorporated under the capital of Reversal Holdings and revived as a separate company. The company, renamed Rebirth Trading, has transformed into a healthy trading firm with an open and free company culture that wouldn't sadden the father of Richard, who once showed kindness, in heaven. Jones Inventions is thriving more than ever, now innovating with proprietary generative AI, with our development staff brimming with energy every day. I, too, have been immersing myself in new product development, forgetting about sleep and meals. As a president, I realize again these days that I'm happiest and most content when I'm in the field, brainstorming and experimenting with new ideas.